So far, I have made 2 videos on the Men in Black, so we have heard the stories. Now it is time for the real deal, the origins of Men in Black. According to Wikipedia, men in black are usually dressed in black suits who claim to be quasi-government associates that harass, intimidate, or sometimes even assassinate UFO witnesses to keep them quiet about what they have seen, at least from pop culture and conspiracy theorist views. But apparently the phrase is also commonly used to characterize mystery personnel working for unknown organizations, as well as other divisions of government purportedly charged with preserving secrets or doing other unusual tasks. The most common connection men in black have is with UFO sightings that usually appear to people that have witnessed a UFO, and these men in black tend to behave unusual, weird, and sometimes even threatening. So, the origins come from 1947, and it all started with, you guessed it, a UFO sighting. June 27th was the date, to be exact. On this day, Harold Duchel was gathering logs on a conservation expedition along the eastern side of Washington's Maury Island when he noticed 6 donut-shaped objects floating approximately a half mile above his boat. Soon after, one of them plummeted approximately 1,500 feet, accompanied by a hail of metallic debris, some of which struck Duchel's son Charles in the arm, as well as the family dog, who died with the trauma. With his camera, Duchel was able to get some images of the saucer, which he subsequently presented to his boss, Fred Krisman. He returned to the area with skepticism to search for himself and spotted the unusual aircraft with his own eyes. According to 1956 Gray Barker's book, They Knew Too Much About Flying Saucers, the next day Duchel was visited by a man in a black suit, and so they went up to a neighborhood cafe where the man was able to vividly describe what Duchel had just gone through. The man stated, "What I have stated is proof to you that I know a great deal more about this encounter of yours than you will want to believe." Duchel also claimed that the man had threatened him to not talk to anyone about this incident and that his pictures of the incident had been contaminated. And a quick side note to keep in mind, Kenneth Arnold and Ray Palmer were publishers who covered this story at the time. Palmer hired Kenneth Arnold to look into it, and Arnold in turn enlisted the help of 2 US Army specialists who had looked at his own UFO claim. They brought a box of evidence for investigation, but died when their B-25 aircraft crashed on the way from Tacoma to San Francisco on August 1st, 1947. According to the Tacoma Times, the jet may have been sabotaged or shot down to prevent cargo examination. The FBI launched an inquiry right away, and Duchel and Krisman admitted to fabricating the flying saucer claim. Scrap metal and pumice from a Maury Island beach made up the debris. The plane accident was caused by an engine fire, according to the US Army and survivors. The Seattle Museum of Mysteries organized for an examination of debris found from the B-25 crash site in April 2007. Mineral remnants were found to be typical igneous rocks or potentially meteor pieces, according to preliminary results. So this event originally sparkled the interest of UFOs, and with that, the Men in Black conspiracy. But how did we exactly get from this to a whole comic book series and a blockbuster movie tetralogy? The fact that these stories started off a chain of pop culture books and movies provides us with 2 options. Either the stories sounded like a great deal of book material, but this time it would be fictional stories and not myths, or it is a great cover-up and shows how easy it is to transform a real story into a myth and something to make fun of. However, the Maury Island account received little attention in the UFO community until Barker's 1956 book, in which he described his file on the Maury Island case, which was mostly made up of the writings of Ray Palmer, the Chicago magazine editor mentioned in the government's report. Barker went on to link the man in the black suit who drove Daho to breakfast with 3 identically clad men who apparently paid a visit to a young UFO enthusiast named Albert K. Bender in 1953. So what Barker basically did, he took some at the time famous stories about UFO encounters and wrote what seems more of a fictional book, and also included Men in Black in those books, which therefore popularized the phenomenon, and he obviously made good profits. Barker would go on to write several more books on the paranormal and UFOs, including The Silver Bridge, published in 1970, which helped spread the narrative of another well-known paranormal figure, Mothman. However, many in the UFO research field have questioned how much of his writing was done in good faith. However, Barker revealed to one of his UFO researcher friends, Schaefer, that although he does not take MIB and Mothman seriously, there is still something mysterious about the whole field. And indeed there is, because from 1960s onwards, UFO and Men in Black encounters increased massively. But how much of that is real? Is it possible that any of these stories are true? Of course it is. It is plausible that government officials in black suits studied UFO accounts at some point. After all, there was a 1950s Air Force program named Project Blue Book that looked into flying saucer claims. Government officials, such as those in the military, police, Secret Service, FBI or IRS, for example, are known to use their power to frighten others, even if it is unintended. Without a doubt, staging a UFO encounter or making a story more interesting by adding fictional details is common. And referencing my previous videos about the Men in Black, I was hooked in these stories, and I will come forward and say a brave statement that the Men in Black are real. At least in the USA, because for some reason in other parts of the world, Men in Black and UFO encounters are a rarity. They are not necessarily from government agencies, and if they would be, I am pretty sure that they would find a better way to disguise themselves. I am pretty positive that most of them are trolls. However, I do get a supernatural vibe from reading some of the encounters, and I believe that there is more to it. I mean, they could be demons with a goal to deceive people who have encountered them for all we know, but I like the irony in the fact that the whole purpose of the Men in Black is to silence the victims, but that doesn't seem to be working, judging by the fact that there are so many stories out there. And Men in Black are not doing a good job, because their task is to silence the victims, but instead we now have plenty of stories out there describing them, and also all of the UFO reports that are out there. And that's it. I like the fact that one story from 1947 can create this whole phenomena and make it so popular it becomes a part of pop culture. And then we return to the question, how did we get here? I think it's simply entertaining, mysterious and ridiculous at the same time, making it the perfect mix for pop culture content. But that's my take. What do you think? Stay safe and God bless.